You're listening to The Satin Lounge with KiaRene, your elite platform for LGBTQ and Indie Entertainment. That's bittersweet part of the soundtrack of the comic series Flutter by tonight's guest, Jennie Wood. Welcome back, Jennie.
Thank you. Thanks again for having me.
I'm happy you're here. That's a neat concept to have a soundtrack underscore the comic book. You want to tell us more about the soundtrack and how all that came together?
Bittersweet is actually it's a song from my forthcoming novel, A Boy Like Me. When I was writing A Boy Like Me, the girl that my protagonist falls in love with is a singer-songwriter, and I included songs, just snippets of lyrics in the book, and thought, why don't I write the songs so they can go with the book, and the songs will be available along with the book, and just kind of fleshing out the songs and adding another dimension for the reader to have, for the reader to experience.
Flutter addresses a few heavy topics: marriage equality right in the very beginning. It hits you right in the face. Gender identity, sexuality, ethnicity. It's all in this comic series. And comic books or comic series are sort of a niche genre for adults. But for some reason, I've always thought that comics were for kids. I don't know. I guess maybe because of the animation and the cartoon part of it. Who is your target audience for Flutter?
My target audience is really anyone who's ever felt uncomfortable in their own skin, and that's kids, teenagers, adults. There's some adult-esque themes, a little violence and stuff in Flutter that I think would make it more appropriate for 14, 15, and above. But it's really, especially at comic conventions, I've had a wide range of people come up to me who've either read Flutter or they buy it at the convention and come back later in the day or the next day, or even just looking through it cold, and they're very drawn to the story. And that demographic is a broad range, but it starts around 14, 15 and then goes up and through adulthood. And I just feel like, anyone who has just ever felt any discomfort with being who they are at any time can relate to what Lily's going through in Flutter. But, and there are some comics that are just for kids and some that are for adults. I mean, with adults, it really started with graphic novels like Watchmen and Mouse, where these writers and artists started telling more mature stories. And so there's been a bunch of graphic novels in recent years that have been geared more and more towards adults.
How early would you suggest a parent talk to one of their children about identity? Say if a kid came home and said, I found this book Flutter and it really speaks to me.
I think it's because kids are all on their own different timelines, and some think about identity and gender and things of that nature earlier, and some don't. So I think it really depends on when the kid comes to you, whether that's at 6 or 8 or 10 or 15, or the parent notices the kid is obsessing about or thinking about identity and issues like that. But I think it's going to depend on a specific situation, and when the kid either comes to the parent or the parent notices the kid is struggling with this, maybe they're just wrestling with some issue or are fascinated with it by what they're reading.
What do you want your readers to take away from this story besides being entertained and, I guess, educated? Is there any specific agenda you have for creating Flutter?
The goal, I think, is always to entertain and have the reader thinking about issues. So if the reader walks away from it saying that was an entertaining read, a page turner, but it also got me thinking about gender and how society treats boys and girls differently, and how, all the times I think my life would be better if I were a different person, and then realizing, I'm still going to have issues if I were someone else.
Right.
I think if a reader walks away thinking about any of those things, that's a great thing.
The moral being, accept yourself for who you are.
Right.
Yeah. Where can we find Flutter? I know that the publishing company, is it 215 Inc.?
215 Inc. And Flutter's available on their website, 215inc.com. It's also available, you can find it on JENNIEwood.com. It's available on Amazon. You can get a print copy, or you can get it on Kindle. Barnes & Noble, it's available on the Nook. Comixology, for comic fans out there who love digital comics, you can get it on that website as well.
Sweet. So for all things Jennie Wood, you should probably just go to JennieWood.com and find Flutter.
Yeah. Yes. All the links that you
all the links we just mentioned
need and want are there. Yes.
JENNIE Wood.com to download your copy of Flutter right now. What advice would you give other writers interested in this particular genre of entertainment?
The thing about the comic community is everyone is so helpful and just so giving. And so if you are interested in writing comics or graphic novels, I would go to a comic convention, and most of the cities, big and large, have a comic convention every year. There's also traveling comic conventions. And just walk around, and if there's an artist or a comic that appeals to you, walk up and start talking to them and ask them, a ton of questions. They're always just very happy to talk and share ideas and share about their process. Also online, social media opens that up too, where you can approach an artist online if someone you want to work with. Or you can ask another writer about their process and kind of get their feedback and say, I've got this idea, and how would I go about publishing it? And just get opinions, because the comic community is just so open, and the publishing community is very different than the traditional book publishing. Just a very welcoming group of people who are just very inclusive and will just give you as much information as they have.
So get your network on, basically. Get your networking on. Go over to JennieWood.com, matter of fact, and just email her.
Yeah, just email me. I'm happy. I love teaching about comics and graphic novels. I love sharing that information, too. So email me through my website.
Very cool. So what's coming up for you? I think a Comic-Con is in your future. Is that right?
Yeah, speaking of, I'm going to be at San Diego Comic-Con in July. That's the big one.
Wow, the big one, yes.
I'll be in the small press section with Flutter, so, come introduce yourself to me. I've got more comic conventions throughout the year. That information's on JennieWood.com. And then my novel, A Boy Like Me, is being released on September 4th.
Wow, so I'm going to have to bring my son through in July and say hi.
Please do.
I would love for him to meet you
in person.
Absolutely. Jennie Wood, Satin Lounge. Is there anything else you would like to share or say? Or
just a huge thank you to you, to the Satin Lounge, for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you here. Thank you. And please keep us informed about whatever else you have upcoming. We'd love to make sure that the Satin Lounge is informed about it. Ladies and gentlemen, Jennie Wood, thank you for coming and lounging with us, and your advocacy is beyond. We appreciate that.